was planning on hunting a swamp island as soon as we got a north wind, and last week Friday we got a north wind. And just before I went out, a friend of mine, a local guy, an older guy who's disabled, got a hold of me and asked me if I'd help him get a deer. He wanted to know a spot to go, and I'm pretty careful of the spots I give out, but I had one spot where I wasn't really planning on going back there, and it's a lot of deer activity, just not the kind of bucks I'm looking for. And so I sent him over there, showed him where to put his stand up, and he hasn't shot a lot of deer, and he'd be really happy to shoot any deer. So I went and parked in the parking lot, main parking lot for the public land, and that just happens to be across the street from his house. So he went his way, I went mine.
I'm sitting on an island. Last year I shot a doe here. I remember the video, 18 feet closer to God. Shot her right over there. Also gun season, I shot my 12-pointer right there. He came out of bedding the same place the doe came from, but we kicked it and went out that way. In this bedding area right here, I have killed probably about 7 or 8 nice bucks, personally. It's a good bedding area. The whole woods up here got logged. It's a big wooded section. The whole thing got logged, except for this spot right here. And coming in here, it was all acorns everywhere. I'm not seeing much buck sign. I'm seeing a little bit of deer sign. So I don't know what to expect, but you'd think they'd be in here if they logged everything else. And there's acorns all over the place.
I noticed right away there wasn't a lot of buck sign. Now there's acorns on the ground. There's deer tracks and stuff, but not a lot of big buck sign. Which is a little disappointing, but a lot of times I don't see them get in there till later. I thought this year they'd get in there earlier because there's a lot of logging nearby.
So I'm right on the tip of the island. They come in right here off the little island over there. They come out of bedding right here. They come out of the bedding right there. They come right through here. Behind me is a bunch of big oaks. There's some acorns on the ground yet, not many. The wind's coming right in my face. They've got water out here and it's pretty dry. I got wind cover because I gotta get in here pretty close to these beds. The beds start probably 25, 30 yards that way. And I've had deer get up when I'm setting up here. And as a matter of fact, I had Dave hunt here once and I hunted over there. And when Dave sat up here, I heard all this whistling and stuff, and I look up and he's waving at me. I'm like, well, what the heck? And all of a sudden I see him pointing, and this big 8-pointer's loping to me, and I shot it over there. Well, it jumped out of a bed right here when he was setting up. So this wind is a boon, and it's going to help us. But I don't know if anything's in here yet. There hasn't been any pressure. It's been zero pressure. The public land parking lots have been empty because of the heat, and because of early season or whatever. We'll see. I just would have expected a couple rubs in here or something by now.
I wasn't in that tree 15, 20 minutes, and I got a text from Greg, the person hunting that other spot. Crazy Greg, as we call him. And text says, just shot a big doe. So I thought, well, that's cool. So I sent him a congratulations. Then he says, you gonna help me with this? And I says, yeah, when I'm done hunting, I'll meet you by my truck. He says, okay, and I go back to hunting, and that was a good, hour before dark when he shot that doe, real early. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and just before last light, it was probably 15 minutes to closing. I looked over and saw a doe coming out of the bedding area, and I'd already decided he shot a doe. It's Friday. We finally had some cool weather. I'd been hunting in the 90s, 80s and 90s degree weather. We finally had a cooler day. I had the weekend to work with. It was a good day to take a doe. And I already had to deal with his. So I'd already decided I was going to shoot a doe. And I looked down and I saw this doe coming out. And it was kind of disappointing in a way because I should have heard it, and I was listening. And it's just a sign of my old age and my hearing going out. I'm having trouble with my hearing now too. So the deer goes past, and I get ready. I start getting my camera up, and it's getting to where I can shoot it. And all of a sudden, in the distance, coming up the edge of the swamp, I hear, "Dan!" I'm like, really? I mean, clearly audible. You can hear it in the video. "Dan!" The yelling of my name is getting closer and closer and closer. And it's really getting annoying me and it's stressing me out, and I want to take this shot quick. So I get the boat pulled back, and it's a new bow that was built for me by Forge Bows. He even named it after me, the Serial Killer. That's going to be his newest model. This is the prototype. It had a new peep sight on it, and when I pulled it back, that peep sight rolled. It hadn't done that ever before when I was practicing or anything else, but somehow that string must have turned on the loop string, on the main string or something, and I had peep sideways, and I was looking at a solid, but I'm thinking, I can't miss. It's 20 yards, and in the background, "Dan! Dan!" Somebody yelling. I'm not real happy with the sound of that hit. It sounded like a gut shot. And it exited the way I want to leave. Almost the way I have to leave. I could maybe slip out that way, but I'll have to go through a lot of swamp. It almost looks like my peep moved or something. It's on there funny. I don't know. A little nervous about that hit. It did kind of sound like she crashed over there though. But I don't know. She stood there for a second. It's gonna be a long night. A friend of mine, Greg, was down on his luck and he hasn't been seeing much, and he'd be just happy to just shoot a deer, so I told him where to go tonight and he shot one. So we still gotta go look for that. I got it on him where I thought it was a pretty good shot, and I took the shot, but I was horrified at the impact because I heard a slap. And anybody who shot a lot of deer knows that when you shoot them through the chest, it goes. You shoot them through the guts, it goes. So that had me a little worried. The deer bolted to where I entered the swamp, where I crossed over the little area of swamp, stopped, was flicking his tail, and then went into the swamp right there. And I'm thinking, okay, it probably laid down there. But now here comes whoever's yelling, Dan, Dan, up the swamp edge, and I don't want him to spook that deer. And so I get down, I go over by where I hit the deer, and it's getting dark enough now that I need to turn the light on to see, but there is blood spray all over brush. So I'm like, okay, I might have hit back a little bit, but I got something good. But I'm still not going through that swamp edge and busting that deer out of there. So I decided to go into no man's land, and I jumped off the tip of the island right into the goo and swamp and nastiness up to my waist, and covered in this crap, busting through it. Went in a big loop around to the swamp edge, and the whole time I'm going that way I can see a light now coming up that swamp, and I got my headlamp on, yelling, Dan, Danny, Dan. And I'm like, really? And I'm thinking it's Greg, and he's probably going to be mad at me for saying this, but I was getting pissed off. I was thinking, why are you out here looking for me? I told you to meet me at my truck. So I come up to the edge of the woods, and the light comes up to meet me, and I laid into him a little bit, and probably shouldn't have, but I was like, what are you doing out here? And I put my light on this guy, and it's not Greg. And I think I scared the guy a little bit. Older fella, he was wearing a Green Bay Packers jacket, and he says, "What are you doing out here?" I says, "I'm bow hunting." And he goes, "Well, I'm just walking my dog." And I says to him, "Well, I shot a deer, and it's laying right over here someplace. You're going to walk right into it." And he goes, "Well, I'll leash my dog." And I can't really tell him where to go or not go. So I go to leave, and the last thing the guy does is he turns around and looks at his dog and goes, "Come on, Dan. Come on, Dan." Really? You can't make that stuff up. The guy's dog's name was Dan. Dan the dog. Okay, then. There's just blood all the way up here. Oh, wow. And these leaves spraying. Here's the arrow. We found it walking in. Okay, so we're going to track her from here out. Where I shot her was about 25 yards over that way. So there's blood going right through here, and it's pretty good blood. She's going to be down. So, it's quite the track job, a lot further than what I thought. I got to see where I hit this thing. But funny, it got off that island in a spot where I should have seen it. We went blood trail right through an opening that I should have been able to see from the tree. We got into the woods here, and I got an interesting story for you. Right before I shot the deer, somebody's walking around in the woods back here yelling, "Danny boy." It got dark. I come out of the swamp, and there's a light over here walking towards me going, "Danny? Danny?" I walk out, I'm like, "What?" Light the guy up, and it's not nobody I know. And the guy's looking for his dog named Danny. So he was walking around in here, and this is right where we found a deer. It ran right to where he was at. So I see it up here. I haven't looked at it yet, but I found it crashed right there. So come on, let's go take a look at it. Yeah, here it is. We got a tangle of briars, huh? Nice adult doe, but it had no fawn. Maybe the coyotes got it, I don't know. Yeah, adult doe. Yeah. Where the heck's the hole? There's an exit wound right here. I thought I hit it funny. That's got to be the entrance where it was. I literally hit it way back there, huh? Wow, that's not good. Got me another one. So it gets better. We go off to track Greg's deer. And we get there, and, Greg was a little excited. And that deer only had to take a couple of steps, and it would have been in an open field, and it was headed for an open field. And in the excitement, he shot, in my opinion, a little too early. And he shot through some thick stuff, and he hit a branch or two before he hit the deer. The arrow didn't go through, but he had hit it. There's no arrow in the ground. There's no sign, no blood, no nothing. And we looked around and looked around and looked around and couldn't find nothing. So I went right back to where I thought this deer was hit. And I tried to figure out exactly where it was. And I looked up at where his stand was and tried to find a little opening. Where did he shoot? And I'm figuring if he's using a brand new broadhead, which he was, there should be a blowout of hair someplace where it cut the hair when it went in and came out. And sure enough, I found a patch of dark brown hair up on some branches, but it was, a good 3 feet off the ground, which is pretty high. And then when I looked real close at the hair was real dark, kind of like my hair. Not the gray hair, this hair. And that dark hair told me that it's the top of the back, probably around the loins. Usually not a fatal hit unless you drop it in its tracks. So I looked, I could see where it spun its feet around, turned around to run, and I actually found where the arrow must have been sticking out the other side, where the broadhead impacted a small diameter tree, and you could see where the razor sliced the tree. And if you looked real close, you could see a blood line along that razor cut and a little tiny piece of fat. But yet I was able to follow that trail for 100 yards and not pick up one drop of blood. And by this time it's the middle of the night after dragging mine out and all this, and I said, you know what, I'm done. And he says, well, I'm going to come back in the morning and I'm going to find that deer. I don't lose deer. I'm like, well, good luck to you. He says, I'm going to bring my dog, and my dog should be able to smell it down, and I'll be able to find blood. You'll probably find blood if you get out a couple hundred more yards and fan out. I says, if it's shot, it's going to bleed. It's just not bleeding yet. So I leave, I go home. Next morning, about 8 a.m., he calls me. He says, hey, I'm out in the woods. I found blood. I go, you did? He says, yeah, it's dried up. But there's a drop every 2-3 feet, and he goes, it's followable, it's going up a trail. I go, is that trail headed towards kind of a hillside off to your left? He says, yeah. I says, well, whenever we shoot deer in that area, I says, a good percentage of them die right up on that hill, on that point when it's this wind. They bed there, turn around, watch their back trail, and die up there. I says, if you lose that blood trail, check that point. He says, okay. So an hour goes by. And he calls me back and he says he's up on the point. The blood trail went up there. But he can't find no bloody bed. He can't find the deer. He can't find no more blood. He says, but I found fresh blood. He goes, is that, you think that's off that deer? I says, well, yeah, you probably kicked it out of its bed up there and it took off. I says, it's definitely blood. He says, yeah, I'm touching it, looking at it, it's blood. He says, it's even bleeding better than it was yesterday. I says, okay. I says, just stick with it, see what happens. Still not thinking he's ever going to find this deer. So he goes down the hill into this thicket and calls me back, and he says, now this is, remember, a couple hours later again now. Now it's midday. And he says he's wandering around this thicket, and I know the thicket. It's about an acre in size. Real thick with, like buckthorn. And he says all the trails in here have deer blood on it. He goes, he's going up and down every trail. He goes, I think it's running circles around me. And I said, well, there's no way that deer is staying in there and running circles around you while you're in there talking to me on the phone. I go, there's no way. I says, I don't know what happened there. He goes, literally there's blood up every trail. I says, well, circle the back side of it and see if you can find where he exited. So he calls me back an hour later. I found it. I found the trail where he exited. I said, okay, stick with it. So another hour goes by and he calls me and he says, okay, the blood trail went to a cornfield. And he says, it's bare dirt in the corn and it's soaking up the blood, and I can't find no blood in that cornfield. And he goes, there's deer tracks everywhere, so I don't know what tracks are hers and what aren't. And I said, well, that particular cornfield is only about 100 yards wide. It's like a strip. I says, just go straight to the other side, in line with that trail. Look up and down those trails over there and see if you can find blood exiting the cornfield on the other side. So an hour goes by, and now I'm getting ready to go hunting. And at this point, he's been out there all day. No water, no food. He's disabled. He can hardly walk. He's got bad knees. And he's out there this whole time. So he calls me again and he says, well, I picked up the blood leaving the cornfield. And he says, but the deer is doing the weirdest thing in the world. He goes, it's walking in circles and loops. Little 6-foot circles, 12-foot circles. But it's going up this deer trail, not staying on the trail, just going in circles. And I said, I've never heard of anything like that before. I says, are you in a thicket? He goes, no, I'm in open grass. I go, this is unbelievable. I go, you need me to come out there? He goes, no, I got this. I got this. I think he wants to prove himself, you know. Rightfully so. He's on a blood trail. Stay on it. So I'm almost to my hunting destination, which was about an hour drive from my house. And he's been out there the whole day. And he calls me up and he goes, I got it figured out. And I'm like, figured out? What'd you figure out? What you figure out, Greg? And he says, well, he goes, about this blood trail. He goes, it turns out when I was up on that hill early in the morning, my dog cut his foot. I've been tracking my dog. He's been tracking the blood trail on his dog. If his dog lost that much blood, you better take it to a vet.